Hey everyone. So, I got back this weekend from watching Captain America Civil War on opening night, and wow, what an experience. I've been sitting on this review for a couple of days now, because I was trying to think of how I should do it. Do I do a spoiler-free review for everyone that hasn't seen it yet? I decided not to. As a moviegoer and a comic book fan, I didn't feel like I can express how awesome that movie was without going into spoiler territory, And honestly, there's hundreds of reviews out there that are spoiler-free that all say the same thing. It was a great movie. We're gonna go all in. We're gonna talk about the plot, we're gonna talk about the after-credit scene, we're gonna compare the comics, etc., etc. So, spoilers. So please be aware. If you're looking for something without spoilers, this is not the review for you. One more time. Spoilers. 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 Now, it was very different from the Civil War you see in the comics, but at the same time, it does pull a lot of things from the comics that fans will recognize. A lot of really cool treats. The movie opens up in Nigeria. The Avengers are tracking down Brock Rumlow. Now, if you don't remember him, he is the guy from Winter Soldier. He was part of the S.H.I.E.L.D. strike team that worked alongside Captain America. Turned out he was at Hydra the whole time, and at the end of the movie, you see him fighting with Falcon, and then the building just falls on him, and at the end, they show him all burned up. Well, he's back again. He comes back as Crossbones. I love the costume they designed for him. It looks so badass. In the comics, he looked like kind of like a luchador mask that he was wearing, and here it's almost like part of his armor. It looks like he's wearing body armor, and he's got big mechanical gauntlets that he punches hard with. They made him look so menacing. I love it. And of course, when the Avengers find him, there's a huge fight. And one of the biggest praises I could give this movie is the fight choreography. I mean, you see all the Avengers working together during the fight. They're not just punching and kicking. I mean, they're giving each other backup, using their powers in sync with each other. Scarlet Witch, she's launching guys in the air, and then Falcon's going in to kick them. You see Black Widow surrounded by a bunch of men, and then Falcon uses a sidekick to take them out. And yeah, you heard that right, sidekick. Falcon's got a little robot bird that he just controls remotely, and it flies around and shoots and scans the environment. And he calls it Red Wing. Red Wing is a falcon that Falcon carries around with him all the time. They share a telepathic link. He can see through the bird's eyes and give him orders mentally. This was an extremely cool nod to see in the movie to that. And one of the biggest differences between Civil War the movie and Civil War the comic is the situation that causes the Civil War. In the movie, when they're fighting Crossbones, he's about to blow himself up because he knows he lost. So Scarlet Witch launches him in the air, he blows himself up. After Scarlet Witch launches him in the air and he blows up, it takes out an office building with a bunch of innocent people in it. Even though it wasn't her fault, the movie does a great job showing how completely guilty she is over it. In the comics, essentially, an explosion still caused the entire situation, but even though the situation in the movie works perfectly for the story they're telling, don't get me wrong, but the situation in the comics was a lot worse. You had the New Warriors, this group of reality show superheroes that were trying to film a segment, and they ran into supervillain Nuke, who could blow himself up. They started fighting him next to an elementary school, so he blows himself up right next to that elementary school. He kills 612 people, 60 of them being kids, so that's pretty bad. Just like in the movie, the world starts turning against the idea of superpowered people just running around doing whatever they want. So the government comes up with a law requiring all superpowered people to register for the federal government and work for them. That also involves them not having secret identities, which for some characters like Spider-Man, that can have really, really bad consequences. In the movie, there's a similar effect. They still sign into law where superheroes have to register with the government or retire. That also puts the Avengers under the government's control. So basically, the government decides when and where to deploy the Avengers. And it makes sense that in the movies, they don't really touch on secret identities. The world knows Tony Stark is Iron Man, Thor is Thor, Captain America, Steve Rogers. And just like in the comic books, a grieving mother gives Tony Stark the guilt trip that kind of sets him on the path of, hey, you know what? This is the right thing to do. This is what we have to do. We have to follow this law. And understandably, that puts Captain America in a spot where he just can't agree to sign a piece of paper that puts him under the government's control completely. He makes a good point that this puts the Avengers under the control of people with agendas. I mean, in all honesty, different governments have different agendas. They're going to want different things. So While people in one country are dying because of a supervillain attack, the government's having a meeting deciding whether or not to go in when the Avengers could just go in and save the day. But the movie does do a really good job of painting both sides to where when you sit down and think about it, you're like, man, they both have really good points. So it doesn't really paint Iron Man or Captain America as a solid villain. It plays with your emotions. You're sitting there watching it and you're like, oh man, I don't know how to feel. I'm Team Captain America personally, but Tony Stark made some good points. He does. Neither of them are 100% right, and the movie does an awesome job of showing you that. And the man that presents this new law to the Avengers is General Ross from The Incredible Hulk.
New York. Washington, D.C. Sokovia.
You've operated with unlimited power and no supervision. That's something the world can no longer tolerate.
I absolutely loved seeing him on the big screen again because I feel like The Incredible Hulk is the lost movie in the Marvel Universe. I feel like that's the one that a lot of people forget is part of the cinematic universe. It's part of the whole shebang. I guess it's because they've only made one, which, makes sense. And when the Avengers came, they replaced Edward Norton with Mark Ruffalo. So, even the actor's different. So if someone now goes back and watches The Incredible Hulk, it's not the same Hulk they're seeing in the Avengers. Having General Ross in this movie is a great way to remind people, hey, this is all connected, even back then. And from a comic book point of view, makes sense. He never trusted the Hulk. He never trusted any superpowered character. So he's the perfect guy to say, hey, you guys have to be put in check. Sign this law or you're done. Vision and Scarlet Witch. They're two of the newest additions to the Marvel Universe, and I think this movie did a good job of fleshing them out a little more. Because, you didn't really have time to flesh them out in Age of Ultron, because they were new characters. They were there just to help fight. And there's so many little moments that hint at Vision having some kind of affection for Scarlet Witch. And this is pulled right from the comics. In the comics, Scarlet Witch and Vision eventually do develop a romance and get married and have kids through this. I know he's a robot, but, you gotta read the comics. But it happens. It happens. And the movie is definitely... And the movie definitely shows these moments where you can see Vision developing human traits. At one point, Vision even tells Iron Man that he was distracted about something, and Iron Man goes, I'm paraphrasing here, so forgive me if it's not exactly what they said, but Iron Man says something along the lines of, distracted, I thought that couldn't happen to you. And Vision's like, neither did I. So you can see all these human traits starting to show up in the character, and it makes me real curious to see where this is going to go. I wonder if he's going to develop that relationship with Scarlet Witch from the comics. Are they going to get married? Or we'll see. But they're planting seeds. The seeds are there. Black Panther is another newcomer that got introduced in this movie. Blew me away. Blew my expectations away. I was scared it was going to be like Wonder Woman and Batman versus Superman. I thought she was one of the cooler parts of the movie, but there was nothing fleshed out about her. The movie ends. You really don't know anything about her. Black Panther was the complete opposite. Like he's a huge part of the movie. He was fleshed out in this movie to the point where when the movie's over, you are aching to see that Black Panther movie and you can't wait for it. They hit all the check marks. He's got his African accent. He moves like a panther on all fours real fast, and he's a total badass. And one part's hilarious when he meets Hawkeye, he goes, hey, we haven't met. My name's Clint. And in typical Black Panther style, forgive my African accent, he goes, I don't care. They nailed the character. He has a full-blown origin story in this movie. And it wasn't just lazily thrown in there. By the way, I'm Black Panther, this is what I do. No. He thinks that the Winter Soldier killed his father, so throughout the movie he wants vengeance and he's just after him. And Captain America is protecting him because they're buddies, so of course Black Panther's Team Iron Man. Another newcomer in this movie, Spider-Man. Tom Holland as Spider-Man. This kid nailed the role. Nailed it. He is the best on-screen Spider-Man by far that I've ever seen. Against popular opinion, I did not hate Amazing Spider-Man 2. I actually enjoyed that movie quite a bit. I thought Andrew Garfield was the closest we've ever seen to Spider-Man on the big screen. Tobey Maguire in the original Spider-Man movies, while those Spider-Man movies were good, it wasn't the Spider-Man from the comics. Spider-Man from the comic, he's always jumping around, making all kinds of jokes, constantly running his mouth. This movie does that. He's hilarious, as he should be. Yeah, at one point, he's just running his mouth, and War Machine asks Iron Man, how old is this kid? And it's just little moments like that take you right back to the comics, and you think they finally got him right. And the chemistry between Spider-Man and Tony Stark is just completely natural. I'm excited to see Iron Man in the Spider-Man movie now. Just seeing how well they did together here, you want to see more of it. When they first announced that Spider-Man was going to be in this, I was like, that doesn't make sense. Where's he been this whole time? The movie has a great way of explaining it. Tony Stark's been keeping tabs on all these superpowered people running around. Like, he knows about everybody. He just decides, you know what, this kid might be useful. Let me go talk to him. And that's a great way to introduce characters in the future. Now, they don't necessarily need to have that origin story, their standalone movie. They can appear in other movies because Iron Man's been keeping tabs on them. He knows about them already. They just don't know that. Ant-Man in the mix. That was a delight. I really enjoyed the Ant-Man movie, and his personality fits so well with this group.
Captain America.
Mr. Lang?
It's an honor. I'm shaking your hand too long. Wow, this is awesome. Captain America. I know you too. You're great. Jeez.
I mean, he was one of the founding members of the Avengers, so even though it's not the same Ant-Man, it just felt so good seeing him run alongside Captain America and fight alongside him. Oh my god. And the part when Hawkeye launches an arrow with little Ant-Man just sitting right on the arrow, and he launches that arrow, I was ecstatic. I mean, that's like their signature move together. You've seen it in the comics. Ultimate Marvel vs. Capcom 3 has that as one of the super moves. I mean, it's as iconic as Colossus throwing Wolverine. And one huge surprise I didn't see about Ant-Man coming is you see Giant Man. You see Ant-Man turn into Giant Man. Not expecting it at all in that movie. Kudos to Marvel. Kudos. You know why? Because I'm so used to those kind of things being spoiled in trailers. There was not one trailer, not one TV spot that I saw that showed Giant Man. And that scene is one of the best scenes in any movie I've ever seen, because Spider-Man, he's swinging around Ant-Man and he makes a joke about Empire Strikes Back. If you've seen that movie, you know exactly what's going to happen next. Spider-Man takes down Giant Man just like the Snowspeeders take out the AT-AT Walkers. That was just genius comedy gold. You know, eventually you see that part in the trailer where all these characters meet at the airport and they just fight it out. I thought this was going to be like a little 10-minute fight at the end of the movie, then it was going to be over and all the characters were going to kiss and make up at the end. I was wrong. It's a huge fight with all these characters using their powers all over the place, people flying around, people shooting lasers. It's ridiculous. It just doesn't get any more comic booky than that. I don't remember the last time I was so excited sitting in a movie theater chair. During the fight, War Machine gets hurt accidentally. It reminded me of the scene in the comics when Goliath gets killed by a blast from the fake Thor clone. It was just very reminiscent of that. And speaking of Thor, by the way, he's not in here. Of course, he's dealing with his own issues up in Asgard. But it makes me curious how Thor would have reacted to this whole situation, or how the Marvel Cinematic Universe at least would have handled it. In the comics, they were very clear about how Thor felt about everything when he came back to Earth. I mean, he gave Tony Stark a beatdown because of it. By the end of the movie, of course, you find out the real villain behind the scenes that was manipulating everything. Baron Zemo. This version of Zemo, he's Zemo in name only. Completely different from the comic book version, which for this version of the story and what they're telling, he fit perfectly. Now, in the movie, he was on Sokovia when Ultron attacked. His family was killed during the fighting. Of course, now he wants revenge against the Avengers, so he's manipulating everything to get them to destroy themselves from within. He's more of a tactical villain. In the comics, he was more of a stereotypical villain. He had a burned up face, he covered his head in a mask, and completely hated Captain America. He was always doing little experiments on people, giving them superpowers, so yeah, he's the villain in this movie, but don't expect to see the comic book version in any way, shape, or form. And another cool thing from the Civil War comics you get a glimpse of is the super prison. In the movie version, General Ross has this huge prison that comes up from underwater, and that's where he holds all the superpowered people after he arrests them. In the comics, it was Tony Stark that built the prison, And that's where they were holding all the superpowered people in the negative zone, another dimension. So that's a nice little nod to the comic books. I was worried they were going to kill off Captain America, because in the comics, Captain America dies at the end of Civil War. None of the main Avengers, none of the main characters die at the end of this movie. I like that a lot better. It leaves you with this uncomfortable feeling that nothing gets resolved. There's no winners by the end of this movie. The laws are still in effect, and it leaves the Avengers fragmented. I mean, they're not a unified force. It leaves this extremely dangerous situation open. When Thanos comes up in Infinity War, none of these guys are working together. It was an extremely powerful way ending this movie, with all of these characters still alive and knowing that they're broken as a team. Let me tell you another thing that this leaves it wide open for. In the comic books, there has been all kinds of versions of the Avengers. You've got the Mighty Avengers, Secret Avengers, New Avengers, just all kinds of groups of Avengers operating at the same time. And think about this. In the movie, you've got Iron Man and his group officially under the government's payroll, you could say. And you've got Captain America and his team still hiding out and operating. There's two sets of Avengers out there in the world. I mean, Marvel and Disney aren't stupid. They love their money. You might have the Avengers movie, and then later on you might have the Mighty Avengers, and it's a whole separate group of Avengers. Just the possibilities are endless. The after credit scene, you see Bucky being frozen in a lab, and it's something he agrees to because he wants help pulling all the programming that Hydra's done in his mind. And the lab is run by Black Panther, and he's with Captain America talking. And the camera zooms out to the window, and what do you see? You see an African jungle and waterfall, and then a big-ass Black Panther statue. They're clearly in Wakanda, the Black Panther's home. The most technologically advanced civilization on Earth. And it was really cool seeing that. Like I said before, it just pumps you up for the Black Panther movie. Yeah, it was awesome. A++. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed your weekly Midnight Movies movie review. If you enjoyed the video, please remember to like, subscribe, and leave me a comment down below. Are you Team Captain America or Team Iron Man? And how'd you feel about the movie? Oh, and don't forget to check out some of my other videos. You might find something you slightly enjoy. You can click on some examples right here on this page. This is Fabian from GamerThumbTV, the best channel for gamers, movie lovers, and anyone else who loves wonderfully nerdy things. Till next time, guys.